All right, welcome to the Legendary Upside YouTube channel. Kind of an impromptu stream here because we finally launched the Sidekick. We've been working on this. Launch day was every day for the last week, and it finally actually was today. So we're just excited. We're having some whiskeys here, and just happy to have this thing out there. The description of this video, I believe, should include. Let me pull it up and make sure, but it should include links to the Sidekick and what is Sidekick? It's our new dynamic rankings tool that we just launched. And so, if you want to test this thing out, go to legendaryupside.com. There's a link there. Sign up for any subscription, $10 a month. Go ahead, sign up, and you have until the end of Friday to test this thing out. You also have until the end of Friday to get $150 off. And the way we kind of we're going through the different pricing stuff, it was weirdly prorating, blah, 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 blah. What we're doing is, because the Sidekick sub includes a Legendary Upside subscription, sign up for the Sidekick. You get the full year of a Sidekick. You get $150 off with promo code LEGUP, and then I will go in and refund you the remaining value of your Legendary Upside subscription. So if you have 75% of the value remaining, you have 9 months left on it, I'm going to refund you 75% of that, and you'll see that in 5 to 10 days. So that's how we're going to do it. Basically, you're kind of starting a new subscription with Legendary Upside in a sense, but you're going to get refunded the credit for whatever you had left on the old subscription. Is just by far the cleanest way that, after a little bit of trying some stuff out, that's by far the cleanest way to make sure that everyone's getting $150 off and just rolling out nicely. So that's where we're at with the signups. All the links in the description. But I highly encourage you, go try it out. Go try it out. $10. You can go try this thing out as a leg up subscriber. And guess what? It's very helpful for us, even if you don't sign up, because we need to know how many servers and whatnot to have for this thing. So it's a stress test that is going to help us dial in what we need to serve the demand for this. This is also going to be the tool that covers playoff best ball. So if you sign up for the yearly, you're going to get playoff best ball as well. But let's go ahead and just kind of dive in and show off the Sidekick a little bit here. I'll share my screen, and yeah, give you a sense of, we dropped a video earlier today showing what this can do and what it's about. But we'll run through some slow drafts here. Why slow drafts? Because I'm about to expire on a fair amount of drafts, so we need to do this. I haven't had a chance to draft them, so we're drafting them now. All right, so this is the Sidekick. Where should it go? Where does it have to go? It goes wherever you want. You want to minimize it, you minimize it. You open it back up. Open back up, Sidekick. All right, well, didn't open back up very well that time. Let's see. Oh my god. Anything that we've dealt with as far as bugs go has been a refresh type of situation. So if you're dealing with something that you're like, why isn't this working the way I want it to? Refreshing the page has worked the vast majority of the time. If that has not working for you, jump in the Discord. We've got a Sidekick support channel, and so we'll work with you. We'll jump on a call with you if needed. We'll get things working for you. Someone's was just having trouble. They just weren't able to access it. Gave them access through a new email, and that worked immediately. So if there's some issue, we'll work with you. We'll fix it. We'll get you going. So jump in the Discord. That's by far the easiest way. Links to that in the description. If you go to the legendaryupside.com/sidekick, that's where you'll find the Discord link for the support. All right, but yeah, let's dive into some drafts. Let's start with this one since it's about to end. About the timeout. So the Sidekick here, if you have not seen this before, what it's doing is it's showing dynamic rankings, and it is boosting Caleb Williams because we have a teammate, Keenan Allen, We have a Week 17 opponent in Kenneth Walker. And Caleb Williams, also a pretty good pick right here. We like Caleb Williams, but we have him above Jordan Love, for example. We have him above Jaden Daniels, who we don't have any correlation with. Jaden Daniels is a totally fine pick here too, but I think once you have Keenan and a bring back, you would take Caleb Williams. Any thoughts on this situation here, guys?
Yeah, Caleb's fine here because you missed on Burrow. The way I kind of look at it is I go through my wide receivers. I'm looking at Chase. Burrow's off the board, so he's not available. I do have an out in Tua with Jalen Waddle, so I got one there that I want to keep track of. I got Keenan Allen, and that's with Caleb Williams right here, and then I got Ladd, and so that's Justin Herbert. So you're kind of in a fine spot right now. And then I'm sorry, who was your tight end again?
My tight end is Travis Kelce.
Okay, so that quarterback's gone too. So you got 3 quarterback outs right now. This is right about, it's a reasonable place to take Caleb. It's a little early, slightly before ADP, but it really doesn't matter too much to me here. I would basically say if you've got another position that you really like, then don't take Caleb. But for me, where you're at, you could either take Raheem Mostert and be done at running back, but I don't really know that we want to do that. We might want to just leave ourselves available to scoop good running back value later. And then there's no real wide receivers here. I think we got to scroll down quite a bit to find a wide receiver, kind of pick clean here. So I think this is a fine spot to take Caleb just because there's not really a better option and you don't have a million quarterback outs.
Yep, I agree. Shady, anything?
No, I tell people at work not to ask me to make important decisions after 3 p.m. Eastern, and we are so far past that I'm not going to have much to say at this point. I think generally when a quarterback is up there, I have been upset with myself if I've decided not to take it and there's not a clear set of blockers and a good way to push it around, so I tend to grab that quarterback.
Yep. Here, Ricky Pearsall at the top of the list. The Sidekick thinks we probably need a receiver. We've got 5 receivers. One of them, Rashee Rice. That's not built in. Doesn't know Rashee Rice is getting suspended, but I do. And I'm like, yeah, I probably do need a receiver. But it would like round 12, you only have 5 receivers. You don't have a 6th. You're okay at running back. Not like amazing at running back, but it's not like a huge need. Obviously, you don't need quarterback. That's docked. You can see that's docked here. If you scroll over, you get the hover over text that's showing up on the screen.
It won't because you're just sharing. Okay. Yeah.
You can't see it, but it hovers over just with docked. So, I mean, Pearsall, I think, getting the triple stack with Purdy, need receiver. That's pretty easy one. This is not like, oh my God, how did it know to take Pearsall? What this is, though, is you see this draft list? See this draft? That's all the drafts I'm on the clock yet. I like that I'm going in and it's going, hey, Pearsall's the obvious pick. It just makes my life a lot easier. CJ Stroud at the end of the 5th with Tank Dell, pretty good pick. Comes right to the top of the queue. He's 3rd on the list of ADP. Kyle Pitts, normally a good pick. I already have Sam Laporta. That gets tougher. So what'll be interesting here is that the Sidekick is kind of designed to really not drop the baby at receiver, especially with these rooms the way they are right now. And so when I take Stroud, it's going to probably flip Jordan Addison over James Cook because it's gonna be a little bit nervous about what my wide receiver is going to look like if I wait to the 7-12 to get my next one. Let's see. Yeah. So I flipped just Jordan Addison over James Cook. It didn't go nuts, right? Cook is still 2nd. Mixon's 4th. So, if you want to go away from receiver here, like by all means, I actually am. I'm gonna say nope. I'm taking James Cook. I like him a lot. I'm gonna take my chances at wide receiver. I feel like my receivers are pretty strong. I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Did you guys want to? I've got this in a manageable spot now where I'm not going to time. Let me do this one, and then do you guys want to do any of yours?
I think I cleared a lot of mine when I did, I think, a batch of 7 and a batch of 8 Chihuahua fasts at a time. and I also was just doing all my slow drafts while doing that. So I think I cleared most of mine out, but I'll take a look here and see what I've got, if there's any worth sharing.
Curious what you guys would do here. This is one Tolbert it likes, but I'm kind of sick of drafting Tolbert, to be honest. It likes Shipley because I could use a running back. He's correlated. It's kind of into Devontae Walker. I've got what Raven do I have? I've got Zay Flowers, so it's like, yeah, you could do like a little Ravens thing. You could do Keaton Mitchell's a Ravens thing. I honestly think I'm going to IKB it and take Jalen McMillan, who I just like taking here. And he's at the top of the ADP. So I'm going to take, this is a case where I'm like, yeah, none of these suggestions really, they're just not doing it for me. So I'm going to take the guy at the top of the list. He's still not like super far down the list. I'm going to go ahead and take Jalen McMillan. And then we'll see. At that point, I like Shipley a lot as a final correlated RB6.
I like McMillan there a lot just because he seems like he's a guy that's probably going to rise here. We're already starting to hear some good stuff about him, and so I just want to be ahead of that. It's really as soon as we start getting a little signal on these guys, I kind of want to attack it more aggressively while they're still free. I also kind of feel like we haven't gotten the signal yet on Devontae Walker, but we're getting signal that there's a vacuum there being made by Bateman, just not having great days at practice. So
I saw one bad day, but you don't normally hear he had a bad day. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I've seen two things now that were not it's weird to see not kind stuff about a player at this point, right?
It is, yeah. Especially from beats. That's not really what beats are kind of. Yeah, sometimes you'll see coaches talk about like he needs to work on this or whatever, but normally when we see beats, like really, the only time the time that sticks the most in my mind is when the Giants beats were like Kenny Galladay is done, like this is as dusty as I've ever seen a guy, and it was over. Like he didn't see the field that year. So Nick asked how far we scroll down. It depends on the situation for me. I think at the end of the draft, I'm more willing to scroll down. I would say be aware of what you're kind of doing when you scroll down. And one thing you're doing is you're kind of abandoning some of the tiebreaker math that goes into the diversification elements that we have in the tool. To me, that tiebreaker stuff is like not that important at the very, very, very end. You know, at that point, it's like you don't necessarily want to just be always taking the same guy in round 18, but like it's a big tier that, you know, whoever happened to float to the top to me isn't as important. Whereas where do I really want to be trusting that tiebreakers type stuff? It's when it's saying, hey, take Zach Moss here instead of Jalen Warren or even Zamir White, who you normally take ahead of Zach Moss. Go ahead and take Zach Moss here. This would be a good time. I go, okay, I don't have any correlation with either guy. I'm going to go ahead and take Zach Moss. Shady, what would you kind of agree with that? Like if we're down in round 18, at that point, are you thinking, you know, scroll a little further down because we're kind of in a flatter tier?
Yeah. So I would do this most places. I think it's really okay to scroll down past somebody who you think is a fade. Generally, fading people is less punishing to your portfolio and all those things. I wouldn't necessarily scroll down to get a specific person, though, as much as I would just scroll to the first person I was happy with rather than skipping down. Just because if you're happy with everyone at that tier, then you would let the randomness sort of take care of that portfolio part for you. But you can still skip the people you're like, no thanks. I've been doing a lot of that with Samaje Perine right now. Been getting more of him than I would like in some of the recommendations because it doesn't know that he might get cut before the season starts. And so I've been like, maybe this is not the time to be taking that.
That makes sense. One second. One thing I'll say on the stands is that if you want to take a stand, you really don't. It's not if you want to take a big stand. If you want to take a guy at the very end all the time, or if you want to be really overweight on, you know, like I really like Jalen Warren, right? I want to be really overweight Jalen Warren. It's not designed to give you a huge bag of Jalen Warren. because I mean, come on, like why would we design a tool for wide consumption that just like out of the box gives you a gigantic bag of one player? Like it's not good. So if you want to do that, you're going to need to IKB it a little bit. I plan to IKB it a little bit, but what I'm trying to do is say, okay, is this a tie? And when it's a tie, I'm going to let the Sidekick kind of break those ties, basically. If I'm like, this is a conviction stand, then I'm going to take that dude. But what has happened to me over the past couple years is that I'm like, this wasn't a conviction stand. I just take him because I like him the most. And Shady's analogy of it never feels good to order your second favorite flavor of ice cream. Like, I'm really bad at that. I never order it. I always order my favorite, like literally in real life. I always order my favorite. This isn't an analogy. I just always get the same flavor of ice cream that I love. So if you're looking, if you're that type of drafter, then I think this is really, really valuable to help you do like what you kind of want to do, but are having trouble doing. At the same time, it's going to be a little bit more conservative than you may want to be in terms of taking those big stands on players.
You want to pull up Run Good Rick's comment here, and I can address that a little bit.
Yep.
So Run Good Rick asks, does it have a cap for the most it will want to reach on a player? Does it mainly reach for correlation? So it does have a cap, but it's not like coded in hard in any sort of way. The way we want the rankings to work is that the set of people you're seeing at the top of your queue are all good picks in terms of like the value they add to your team. That doesn't mean that it doesn't know that maybe you can push a pick around the corner or another round because of people who have quarterbacks. So it's not going to give you picks that are a bad pick for your team. If you make a pick, you're still going to make a fine team, but it's not going to try to do those little bit of edges that you can get if you start to try to read the room. And yeah, so it reaches for a number, quote unquote reaches, and it messes with the default rankings for a number of reasons. Correlation is one of them, but also structure, optionality, all the other things that you might be thinking about as you try to draft a team based on the roster you have and the players remaining in the pool.
Yeah, one thing it'll do, like it'll say, hey, this quarterback who is about 14 picks head of ADP would be a good pick for you here because he would be a good addition to your team, and it's within range. And he might not come back. Now, is he the very best pick that you can make? That's up to you to figure out, right? Like you want to look at the room, who has quarterbacks, who has his stacking partners, is pushing him a smarter thing to do. Is there another player here that you want to prioritize that you think, hey, I can get this guy, essentially take one of his other stacking partners. Sometimes you could push Herbert a little bit because you grab Palmer. And then it's like, I have Ladd and Palmer. Herbert's pretty likely to come back. That makes a lot more. Herbert might be at the top of the queue, but I'm going to take Palmer, and then I'll probably get Herbert, right? That would be a perfect place to say, no, I know better as the drafter. I'm not going to, I'm not going to just take the pick that the Sidekick has at the very, very top. What it's doing is saying, this is a really valuable player for you. This is a really highly ranked player. These are rankings. These are just rankings. So you don't necessarily want to just draft the guy at the very top in the same way you wouldn't draft the guy at the very top of the leg up rankings at every pick either. Let's see at some other questions here. How far does Pearsall rise if Ayuk gets traded? I think he rises to like the late 6th round, but we're going to answer some more Sidekick related questions. It just helped me multi-table my final 10 Chihuahua 2s. That alone is worth it for me. I mean, that is multi-tabling with this thing. Zach, how many have you done at one time?
I did 7 twice today, but I did 7 while I also was doing like 50 slow drafts and just like managing I had a bunch of picks and I was just going through them, knocking them out. If you had fun doing the 10 fast drafts, which I did really enjoy it. Like I fired up 4 or 5 a couple different times and it felt super manageable. I like doing it from the active drafts page. I don't even, once you've played around with this a lot, yeah, someone in Pete's Discord did 25 with it. Once you've played around with it a lot, you'll start to get a good feel for what it's doing, when it's doing, and why it's doing it. And you can just read it a lot quicker. And so I kind of get my Sidekick sense tingling. And I know when it's suggesting something and I know that I'm agreeing with it in those spots typically, I can just fly through a pick. But if you enjoyed the fast drafts, you got to try it for slow drafts. Because I have to be honest, I did not like slow drafts last year. I did some out of pure necessity to like max some tournaments I wanted to max. I legitimately enjoyed doing slow drafts this year. I did 165 at a time was I think the highest I got up to. I think, did each of you get over 200 slow drafts at a time with it?
I mean, yeah, I had 200 something because I did the puppy and then I did the pom and then I did the hound dog and the poodle. So yeah, at one point I was well over 200.
I would say, I believe that Hope tweeted out earlier today that the puppy 2 is dropping tomorrow. I think that I'm going to start batching my slow drafts in it because I'm assuming it's going to be a little bit of a larger field. So I don't need to jam all 150 at once. But I think what I want to do is I'm probably going to jam like 30 or I might do 50 tomorrow. It's going to depend. It'll also depend on what we hear from the devs on how quickly we can get DraftKings going. So if I can get the Sidekick on DraftKings, I got some work to do over there.
Yeah, it'll be so to set expectations on that. I mean, we're at least a month out.
Yeah.
I would say August. I would say hope for August on DraftKings. That's what I'm hoping for. So let's hope for August on DraftKings.
Yeah, I was not trying to. I was more so in jest saying I got a lot of work I got to do on DraftKings still. But yeah, I think I'll do between 30 and 50 puppy slows tomorrow. Just kind of get that first batch started. And I would definitely encourage you to give that a try. While we've got the stress test going, if you just want to like see how this thing feels to do slow drafts, this is a great opportunity to try it. The puppy is like probably the best chance you're going to get to really see what this thing can do as far as making slow drafts fun.
Yeah, no, I completely agree because you can go in and you can fire in picks, which I'll do a little bit more of. Artillery Frost said he found the multi-tabling, it didn't help him a ton because the biggest issue is he struggles with managing the board. Any tips there? Because I know you draft with the board up with these, right? Or you sometimes do with the active. So I've seen you do it with the active page and also with the board up.
Yeah, there's two different ways that I think you want to try it and you want to see what works best for you. Number one, you can have the Sidekick dashboard where we've got a draft board on a separate window. If you've got two monitors.
apps.legendaryupside.com/sidekick. apps.legendaryupside.com/sidekick, which you have to have open for this thing to work properly. And that's it. I'll present here again. That looks like this. It's this page here. It's the same general idea. It's got the list of players. It's got the draft board, though. So sometimes this can be helpful. So go ahead. Sorry.
And yeah, in fact, why don't we demonstrate a quick thing? Close this window, close this tab, and then just click the logo in the Sidekick. Yeah. And show people, boom, there you go. So you don't even have to type the web address. You just click the little logo and it'll take you right here. So what I do, I've got two monitors. So I'll put one of these in a separate window on one monitor and have my underdog window on the other monitor. That's pretty nice. At this point, I've played around with the Sidekick enough that I kind of got a good feel for it. So I don't even really do this anymore. I just do it from the actives tab. And I kind of know when I need to go into a draft room and double check something. Usually for me, I double check when it's suggesting me a running back. I want to double check why I'm taking a running back. It's funny, but it's true. When it's suggesting a quarterback, I want to go double check that. But a lot of the times just with the tags in the overlay, you can see, oh, hey, quarterback, 2 teammates stacked. And I can just read it quickly from the tags where I'm like, okay, yeah, this makes sense. I can go ahead and grab someone here real fast. I don't even need to go in it. But you know what? I'll probably do a stream this week and kind of show people how to multi-table some. So maybe I'll rip like 10 puppies at once, kind of show you how I do it.
That would be awesome. Yeah, I think multi-tabling with it makes multi-tabling much easier. And I think generally, like, one of the things that this does is it sort of just keeps you on track. Like, you kind of forget sometimes in slow drafts what you were even trying to do. And it's like, hey, remember that thing you kind of half built and forgot about? Well, it didn't forget. You know, it's gonna remind you of it. So yeah, here let's answer some more questions. We'll get back to my slow drafts in a bit. Because there was an interesting question here. Shady, before you get out of here, any plans to add something to manage my exposures in draft? I know that's intended to be separate, but that's the one thing kind of holding me back at the moment. There isn't. We're not planning on adding exposures into the draft. What we're trying to do is help you create a portfolio that you feel pretty good about when you're reviewing what you've done. Anything to add there, Shady?
Yeah, so I think what you said is correct. One of the reasons why we went with that philosophy rather than proactively managing it is that it matters a lot when you took a player in the draft in the contest window of the contest, right? So taking 30% Jaylen Warren right now is not the same thing as taking 15% Jaylen Warren 30% Jaylen Warren now and 0 for the rest of the summer. It's not the same thing as taking 50% now and 15% later, right? And so you did 50% and 50%. And so we went with a proactive management strategy. And so if you're someone who's put in a whole bunch of your drafts already, you're going to want to keep that in mind. But what this is designed to do is that anytime you're drafting a bunch of drafts in the same window or throughout the course of a contest, it's going to be balancing those in a way that we think is pretty optimal for a contest.
And
yes, I did name my palms.
Oh yeah, Rick, I've got some really disturbing stuff to show you. Actually, I just shouldn't even show it. There's too many names. I think I've named like over 700 drafts right now. I'm not well.
Yeah. So because the Sidekick actually picks up on the names that you've given your drafts, and that'll carry over into that Sidekick page. I have actually opened literally all of my slow drafts and just mashed on my phone keyboard to put random numbers in there. And then gone to the next one and put random digits in there so that I know which draft I'm on when I'm looking over there. Otherwise it's just the mini Schnauzer 2 or whatever the fuck it was.
Yeah. Sack, thoughts on adding a queue of players we expect to target later, then have the model recommendations adjust based on future plans? So the second part, we're not planning on doing. The first part, do we want to do that?
Yeah, the first part, that's actually in the roadmap already. It's something that we've got in the works. We're calling it the back to front helper. And really the kind of idea behind it is we know what players are becoming the most valuable players or having the largest deviation from their standard ranking as you're progressing through your draft based on what you've done, your structure, your stacks you're setting up, your needs. And so we want to identify those for you. Now, granted, we don't want to just add them to your queue right now while it's way too early to take them, but we do want you to be aware of them later. And so we're going to add something that's a little back to front helper where we'll be able to identify those players for you and put them in a list. That way you can have the information you need to plan around potentially targeting them later or saying, nah, I don't need to wait for that guy later. I'm going to take this good pick right now, burn the hand worth two in the bush and all that.
Yeah, one spot that I've mentioned. One spot that I'll mention is because I've used the Hurts Ferguson example, but like this has come up for me where I've got CJ Stroud and an elite tight end, and Bowers comes up. We like Bowers. He's right at ADP. We're structured a position where we can afford the second tight end at this point. The elite tight ends aren't that expensive, so you can justify like a tight end in round 9 with a tight end in round 5, for example. But it doesn't know that you might want to take Dalton Schultz. You know, let's say just hypothetically, for some reason, you didn't have anyone stacked with Stroud, right? Let's say Stroud fell to the 7th round and you took him unstacked. The Sidekick is not going to be like, Dalton Schultz is a priority, man. We got to get at least someone stacked. It's just going to be like, Bauer's is a pretty good pick, dude. That's what it does. What you do is you go, I know, but I need Schultz on this team. Now, you can kind of forget that sometimes, as I have when I'm like, Bowers, I want him, right? So the back to front cheat sheet is going to be our way of helping you just remember that type of stuff. But we don't want to build it into the algorithm because, like, you do what you want with, like, you know, building. Do you want to wait for Schultz, or do you think Schultz stinks and that's why you have two of Stroud's receivers and you're not interested in Schultz? And so you actually want to grab Bowers there, right? So we don't want to kind of push you to Bowers or away from Bowers, but we want you to kind of be aware of what the sidekick might be excited about later in the draft, just so that you can kind of build with that in mind. At wide receiver, running back, and tight end, our running back, wide receiver, and tight end all weighted the same as correlation for a quarterback pick, meaning quarterback is boosted the same amount if you have one running back or one wide receiver or one tight end on the same team. No, they're not. The quarterback is not boosted the same for a running back or a wide receiver or a tight end. There's a bit different. The big difference is that running backs don't do as much, but they still help.
CLN had a good question there in the chat that I think we...
Down at the bottom here?
It says, how has the sidekick changed how you would have normally drafted?
Oh, that's a great question. I can't find it, but how has the sidekick changed how you would normally have drafted? I mean, in the Discord stream that I did, I was in a pocket of the draft, like 7th, 8th, or no, probably more like 9th, 10th kind of round. And I took a running back. I had Jordan Love. And the sidekick was like, cool, we got running back taken care of to a point. You're probably fine. Let's take Romeo Doubs. And I just take another running back in that spot. Like, if I'm in that pocket of the draft where you grab running backs, I'm not thinking about Doubs ahead of ADP to prioritize with Jordan Love because I don't really take Doubs. And the sidekick was it does that type of stuff well, where it's like, hey man, have you, like, you're probably gravitating towards like taking a running back because the running back's good picks here, but you also want to be aware of this correlated wide receiver who is totally in range in this pick at this pick. And I ended up grabbing Doubs. I thought that actually was the best pick in that spot, but not one that my brain would have gotten to in 30 seconds.
It makes me realize how much I pass on Jerry Jeudy.
For me, there's two major things. One is like kind of the whole reason that this collab happened is that I wanted some way to express the nuance that Zach and Pat and the other people who did their rankings have in the closest of players and get the right portfolio management there. The other is it prevents me from making mistakes. A lot of times you're in a draft and you kind of just lose the thread of what you're doing, or you get sort of myopically focused on something that's coming down maybe 4 or 5 rounds later, and you miss whatever good thing is happening to you right in the current round. And the way that it moves things up and the way that it moves things down just stops you from making those sort of like routine or just like muscle memory things that you're kind of just doing. And now when you see something that you're like, oh, actually, no, that is a better choice, or wow, I'm really glad that person wasn't at the top because I had forgotten about this other thing that was going on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure if you're watching this, you probably have had the experience of feeling like you're just like kind of doing the same thing over and over in draft rooms. And sometimes I'll just like take a break from drafting because I'm like, in this current ADP environment, like I almost like can't see another path right now. Like I'm just like kind of just stuck in the same path. And this does a really good job of just kind of like seeing other paths through drafts. And you're like, oh, this is an interesting pick here. Let me try this. And then you're like, oh, that kind of unlocks different stacking partners and different ways to play, certain starts that you may, like with this start, it kind of leads me to a path that I feel very comfortable with. and it can at that point then be hard to break away from. And I think the Sidekick does a good job of just highlighting some other paths that might also be plus EV.
Yeah, there are times where especially if I'm like, I get sniped on quarterbacks and it would have been something where I could have potentially gotten frustrated because like, oh my gosh, I had such a cool team set up and these guys just keep blowing my team up. And I'm sure people who have drafted a lot, you can be good at shaking off the frustration and the tilt when you get sniped, but we're all human, it's natural to get frustrated when you get sniped. And it's just nice to have an impartial buddy along for the ride that's like, it's okay, pal, dust yourself off. Here's the next best choice. Let's get back on track. And some of those teams where I'm like so mad at, in round 9, like, damn it, this Joe Burrow should have come back to me here. This guy had no reason to take him naked. He had 2 elite quarterbacks already. I should have been able to push it, and he doesn't come back. But those teams often end up being some of the best teams I've drafted. And it's because it got me to a place I never could have gotten to on my own. It's just, it's really hard to do all the stuff that people talk about. Like, yeah, you got to factor in week 17 correlation, pay attention to ADP followers and make sure that you're correlating with your team level bets. And, but you don't want to reach too much and, make sure that you're staying within structure. It's easier said than done to do that all perfectly every single pick in the draft. And so it's nice to have some help to just take some of the heavy lifting off your shoulders. And then you can do the fun stuff. And you're like, ooh, Lamar Andrews available here. Maybe I do Andrews first, because if I push Lamar around the turn, I've got Stroud as cover potentially here. We got the Stephon Diggs drafter. He should take him. And maybe I get Lamar around the turn, shoot this Lamar Andrews half court shot. So it's just, it honestly makes drafting more fun for me. Like I don't have to be quite as sweaty with it, but I still get to draft teams that are just as sick. So.
Yeah. So here's an interesting question. Interested to think in an imaginary scenario where the whole field is using this tool, what would you do to leverage the field? Obviously, the whole field is not going to use it, but what would it be? Maybe not stacking at all. Now, what I would say, I think what you would, the value of stacking is not necessarily leverage. It's that we're trying to win a 500 plus field week 17 final. That's the value of stacking, is that we're trying to hit these really, 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 really high end outcomes. And so I don't know, any thoughts on like, what if the whole field was using this? Would you try any leverage things? And then I'm also curious to get thoughts on the purpose of stacking, specifically game stacking, and how you guys see it as being valuable as we build teams in this tournament in week 16 versus week 17.
I mean, the honest answer isn't fun. I think if the entire BBM field was using this tool, I don't think the contest is beatable. So I probably don't play it. I just do some drafts for fun. Honestly, that's the answer, right? If the whole field. So I think I've talked about this on a number of shows, right? Your goal in any peer-to-peer game is not to beat the other sharp players. It's to get your fair share of the players who are not playing optimally or not playing well. If you get to the point where everyone is playing well enough that you're trying to figure out how to beat the sharp players, make sure you're just playing for entertainment value and not trying to get EV out of that. That's not the fun answer, right? That's not like the fun creative, like how do you beat like this weird game theory thing, but in a game with Rake, like that's the real answer.
We haven't had that many signups so far. So
Yeah.
You're okay. You're okay. Don't worry.
The game is safe.
The game is safe. The game is safe. There's still an edge. The other question, Zach, do you want to dive into it at all, the week 16 versus 17 stuff? Because one thing that people have asked us is week 16. I'm sure you guys are building in a bunch of week 16 correlation into this tool, right?
Yeah, so I don't want to spoil all the stuff that I think we're going to write a pretty cool article about this, but using Shady's simulations, we made some pretty interesting observations on what actually happens when you have a game stack in week 16 versus what happens if you don't have a game stack, you just have a team stack, versus what happens if you have no correlation at all. And so we made a toy game to kind of measure this and control all of the variables. And so we observed teams with just one quarterback single stack, quarterback double stack, quarterback single stack with a bring back, quarterback with no correlation, quarterback without his own pass catcher but with a bring back from the opposing team. Any possible configuration like that, we set it up, and then we simulated that 10,000 times and tested all of the different outcomes. Every single player in this toy game had the exact same distribution for their range of outcomes. So all the wide receivers had the same range of outcomes. All the quarterbacks had the same range of outcomes. And the level of correlation between quarterback and wide receiver was the same for all the same team quarterback and wide receivers, and the same for all the quarterback and opposing wide receiver bringbacks. And what we found was that stacking with a bringback in week 17 or in week 16 increased your 99th percentile outcomes, but it actually decreased the total number of outcomes that finished in the top 1 out of 16th quantile, which in simple terms is the number of times you advance. So you advance.
You're sacrificing good enough to advance for some really, really, really good outcomes.
You will sometimes advance by 50. And then you get to send the screenshot around. You're like, dude, I dunked on this pod in week 16. I'm the king. But that screenshot doesn't win you any extra money. There are some times where you would have advanced otherwise if you had a less correlated team with a bring back, but you've sacrificed some of those outcomes now because you've shot for too high of an outcome. So we actually don't factor in week 16 correlation because we think that that's actually an edge that we have by not doing it right now, because people are doing that and they're sacrificing sometimes when they would advance. Now, granted, they're not sacrificing a ton. It's a micro edge. It's still, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge edge, but they are sacrificing times when they would have advanced. Now, what we did find, the optimal configuration for trying to maximize advancing out of week 16 was same team stacks. And really it was big team stacks. Quarterback with a quarterback with a double stack did better than quarterback with a single stack.
Yeah. Which I think points, if you're building out big team stacks, then you can bring that back in week 17 with another single player, or you can bring it back with another team stack, which might, if you're right that those two teams in week 17 are kind of like the game, then maybe they also scored points on the way there, kind of a Cowboys Lions situation where it's like the Cowboys and the Lions crush week 17, or they didn't crush week 17, but there's a lot of pieces that you wanted in that game. But you kind of really wanted those pieces heading into week 17.
I'll also add that not boosting week 16 is not the same thing as docking or saying it's bad to do so, right? So we're not having you reach for it. We're not saying it gives you increased EV, but that doesn't mean you should avoid it if it falls to you or if it matches the structure or whatever else. Is like, I am going to have a lot of teams that have some team stacks or some game stacks in week 16 because that's what fell to me, and I'm building out the team stacks on both sides, not because it's a week 16 game stack, but because having two team stacks is still good, and it's good in week 17 where that is still useful, and so that's going to happen to me naturally.
Yeah, that's a super, super valuable point, because it's not that we're saying week 16 hurts you so bad. It's just it doesn't help you, and there are so many other factors that we can measure for you that do help you. And so those are the things that are driving the dynamic rankings. We're saying, hey, we've identified this stuff that we know gives you increased expected value on your team, and we're adjusting for it. But week 16 does not, but it doesn't mean like, oh, I got to avoid week 16 stacks like a landmine. It's going to sink my team. Like, no, if you just end up stumbling across it because that was the best pick for your team for other reasons, it's fine. But you don't want to seek that out specifically for the sole reason that it's a week 16 bring back.
And the week 16 correlation conversation versus, do I just stack a guy? It seems very clear. You just stack the guy on the same team for week 16, but also for week 15 and for the regular season. And then that helps you in week 17 too. So when you have, an edge that helps you in week 16 that also carries over into the other 3 rounds of this tournament, I think is very clearly the way to go. So it's just prioritizing team stacking is really what we want to be doing. Shady, another question here that really is your domain. If you haven't already, can you speak on how the tool doesn't funnel you to the same teams as everyone else using it? A fundamental question, and one of the things that I was kind of nervous about with this. I mean, we did the playoff best ball tool, and to be honest, it kind of did that. There was like a team, there was a Chiefs team that I won the big mitten with, to be honest. But it wasn't so good in the non-high stakes stuff, because it was like everyone would get kind of funneled to the same team, and it was a good team, but are we all just going to be splitting week 17? Is BBM going to be split 5 ways if we use this?
Yeah, I mean, so the good news is the same stuff that helps you diversify your own portfolio is helping you not compete as much with other people. And it's way less than just 2 people using the same ranks and always drafting the same person at the top of the ranks, because that is going to give you the same team all the time, over and over again. And there's also enough, the game space and the number of players you can draft is just so much larger in BBM and these 18-round drafts that you're diversifying in that sense as well.
Yeah, the randomness and the tie breaking and that stuff, I think, is really important for your individual portfolio. But just kind of by definition, if we're breaking ties in terms of what, how these players are getting recommended in this exact sort of situation, another user won't necessarily see the same player at the top, or even maybe even the second player at the top of the Sidekick. And then you're also going to be breaking those ties that you see in the Sidekick a little bit differently. You're going to be overriding it more or less than another user. That's going to help build out different teams. Another thing, as we actually considered, is this enough? Is this going to be enough diversification within kind of the overall portfolio of people using this? And what we realized is one of the features that we had added in here was kind of helping us create additional diversification, and that's the optionality feature that's built into this. The optionality, the way it works is you end up in like these hyper specific situations where you have one quarterback and the room has kind of left a big kind of backdoor team stack opportunity, right? All the Jets have fallen. Malachi Corley's like past ADP. Rodgers is past ADP. You're on the turn. It's like, okay, this is actually a really interesting spot for you to try to grab these Jets and backdoor stack it, because you need a second quarterback and this backdoor stack is available. But that's room specific. That's almost random, right? Because it's dependent on the room that you're in. It is basically random for our purposes. It's dependent on the room that you're in. Zach, any thoughts on optionality? Was one of your key additions?
Yeah, it's kind of fun because it was one of the first things that when I very first started research.
Sorry, I want to mute myself and I muted you. Sorry.
Wow, I really offended you there, Pat.
No.
It was when I first started researching best ball, optionality was one of the first concepts that I tried to quantify. Like, how valuable is it really to have a player that opens up other stacking options for you, or that has week 17 bringbacks still available? And so that was one of the first projects that I really dove into. So it was really fun to get to see that get incorporated into the Sidekick. And honestly, the way that I always thought about it was, it's just opening up the most valuable or even the most flexible branches of the game tree to you. It's saying there's a lot of choice out. You could draft a ton of good teams in a draft. In fact, during our testing, we have a way of simulating drafts and testing the EV of each pick in a draft. And there's a ton of spots in a draft where there are so many picks that are plus EV. Now, there's going to be a pick or a couple of picks that are the highest EV, but oftentimes there's a ton of good picks you can make. But what optionality really helps you do is it says there's all these good choices you can make, but these choices over here keep you really flexible. It's really hard to end up getting boxed out if you go this direction. It's really hard to even draft a bad team if you go down these paths. Now, there's some good teams over here in these other paths, but stuff can get a little dicey. If you get sniped one time, it can be over if you went down these a little more treacherous paths. And so optionality just kind of keeps you on the paths where it's easy to pivot. It's easy to not get your team blown up. And that's what I think is so valuable, because when you're drafting a huge portfolio of teams, minimizing the number of bad teams you have is just as important as drafting good teams. Like, and this is true in DFS too. If you look at people who are submitting 150 sets, the guys that are grinding out, crushing the high stakes stuff, it's really important to not be submitting bad lineups, and the best players are really cognizant of that. They're not submitting very many minus EV lineups in their set. Now, it's just hard to make every single team be plus EV in any of these games. I'd say best ball is one of the easier places to do it than DFS, but optionality can really help you minimize the number of times that you end up with a bad team or a team you're unhappy with.
Kind of in a don't drop the baby mindset here. This question, this is a more of a DK scenario. It is more of a DK scenario for sure. The quarterbacks sometimes go super early, but I've seen a lot of 4 quarterback teams on Underdog lately, way more than I remember seeing last year. And so if quarterbacks start to get eaten up, would the Sidekick push you to draft quarterback earlier, or would it have to be an IKB scenario? We've experimented with kind of a room reader type of element in the Sidekick. It tends to go, it was going like a little ham. We might end up doing something like that later. It would probably be a feature that you would like turn on, be like, give me that room reader. Like, what do you think? Like, I think this might be like a kind of a really strange quarterback room. What do you think in that type of environment? But we don't have that built in, and we probably won't for a while. Like if we, like as in next year would be like maybe when we would have something like that if we ended up adding it. So that is very much an IKB scenario. Similarly, the more common thing on Underdog is at wide receiver. If you really feel like the wide receivers are flying off the board, the Sidekick is not aware of that. It's generally like pretty pro wide receiver, getting wide receiver firepower and having enough. So you're not going to be like super susceptible to that. But if it's like truly like, George Pickens 4-0, George Pickens 301 is what I keep trying to say. George Pickens 301. Nope. I meant George Pickens 401. The whiskey is doing its job. If George Pickens is going at the 401, Christian Kirk goes at the 402, Keenan Allen goes at the 403. You should grab the last wide receiver at the 404 at that point, right? That's the Sidekick is not going to be going to have that built into it.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, it's something we thought about, and the answer is it's actually just quite hard to figure out. Do you just have like one idiot auto drafter who's like grabbing 3 or 4 quarterbacks really early, and then they're not going to be a problem, so it's going to stabilize in the room, versus like figuring out like, oh, this is just a rankings thing, this is this tournament structure thing. And so we did think about trying it, and the ways we did it felt too.
We tried it.
There wasn't enough nuance, I guess.
It wasn't really
expressing.
Yeah. It was just like, it was kind of like, would you like the Sidekick to start screaming? Because it will. but you don't want it. Like I've done drafts with the Sidekick screaming. There aren't any wide receivers. You don't want to draft with that version. I'm sure there's a more nuanced way to do it. I would like to find that way, but I don't. We don't have it yet, and I wouldn't expect it to be there this year. So definitely an IKB type of thing. And to Artillery Frost's point, it felt like the Avalanche when he was multi-tabling, never felt behind the 8 ball on wide receiver. that is the goal. I mean, they're the leg up ranks, right? This is the leg up ranks. We're not going to let you fall behind at wide receiver with the leg up ranks, even if they're dynamic. That's kind of how this is going to go. Will this tool work with standard ADP / other ranks, or does it only work at the leg up ranks? Currently, just the leg up ranks, but we are working on adding that.
To go back to the Sidekick feeling like the Avalanche, I'll say there are sometimes even when I've been drafting a lot of teams at the Sidekick, and I'm like, man, I've got so many teams where I'm so strong at receiver early that I feel like I'm not even giving myself enough of a chance to attack some of these late round values that I really want. Like, I want to stack up like 3-4 Patriots receivers here, man. Like, but I took too many early. I shouldn't really do that. So there are times where I'm like, you know what? It's telling me to go ahead and take a detour here with Isaiah Pacheco. And so I'm just going to go ahead and do that here. And I know that this is going to give me the opportunity to get some of those late wide receivers I want. So I would say, because this is a me problem, but I'll share with you guys. I oftentimes, when it's telling me to diversify and take a non-wide receiver in the early rounds, I'm like, I'm good. I don't do that. That's for other people, not for me. But you know what? If you just listen to the times when it's like, try running back here, bud. See how it feels. Just try it on for size. Go ahead and do it every once in a while, because honestly, again, those are some of the teams where I like them the best. I'm like, oh yeah, we're pretty strong at wide receiver. We got some really good running backs and elite tight end. And then later, it just hammered Patriots for me.
Yeah, it'll hammer Patriots if you want. We have a question. What will Drake May's ADP after this stress test ends? I don't know. Does he flip Michael Pittman?
I'm curious to see what the Michael Pittman ADP is after the stress test too.
Yeah. So the question here about if it works with other rankings in ADP, I do want to address a little bit more. That is like, I like the idea of this style of drafting. Look, it works with the leg up rankings. We developed it. We're leg up. Like, this is how it's gonna go right out of the gate. But I want this to also work with ADP. I want it to also work with other rankings, and I think that can, to the question earlier of like, how am I not going to draft the same team as everybody else? What if everyone else just starts using this? Well, I think one thing that could happen is maybe people start, as it grows, like the audience of people that are using it, also the inputs to it start to grow too. And I think that'll be an interesting way for people to kind of like diversify like the way they're approaching drafts with this. So it's not just the leg up rankings that work with this. That's one of our highest priority roadmap features. That and getting it to work on DraftKings. So the two things we're focused on adding to this as soon as possible.
Run Goodrick had a really good question or comment here. It said the tool seems to be fine taking late quarterbacks way past ADP, even if they are unstacked. Do you think it's fine to do that if you're trying to optimize for week 17 by correlating QB and pass catcher? So I'll quickly answer it, and then I'll turn it over to you guys to get your thoughts on it too. You've got to remember that we've got a draft capital model built in there where we're measuring how valuable draft capital is, and when reaching is too much or not enough or what have you. And later on in the drafts, reaching doesn't really matter, Pat. If you're in the 16th round reaching for a guy in the 18th round, what is that even a reach? If this is an auction, you took a $1 player instead of a $1 player. Who cares? Like,
Right.
You took the $1 player in a different order than people take other $1 players. Like, it doesn't matter, especially when this specific $1 player has had their value modified substantially by what you have on your team and what you need. So it's pretty good at letting you know, like, hey, dude, if you really want to, just throw ADP out the window on this one. Like, this guy is worth grabbing right here. Now, this is where you can add a little bit of that nuance and some of that soft drafting skill where you're like, you know what? I do want to take, I really want to get Will Levis here. I've got the stack set up. I need a quarterback. but I don't need to take him 14 spots ahead of ADP because I've got other options. If Will Levis goes, it's fine. I can take another dude. It's not the end of my draft. And there's another player, a skill position player I really like here. And he's not going to be here the next time it comes around if I take Will Levis now. So that's the way that I would look at it. But how do you guys handle this?
I was going to say, so most of the times that I see it offering me a QB that has fallen a lot in ADP is usually somebody where there's a backstacking option. And so this is where the optionality is being taken into account, saying that you still need people at those positions. This is somebody you can take. So go ahead and do it. And then the Sidekick is going to send you down the path to grab those later stacks or runbacks. There are also just times when a quarterback has fallen far enough that the points they add without, like, the run back is just ways to get little extra points and correlations and good outcomes. But it's just like, you know what? I've been getting a lot of Aaron Rodgers actually recently. He's been falling a lot because people are not big on his ayahuasca vacation or what the fuck's going on. And so he's been dropping, and I've been like, yes, Malachi Corley is still around and other people in that range that is pushing it up. But it's like, you know, at this point, even if you don't have him, maybe grab this guy because he's just adding enough points to your team and you still need quarterback. Go ahead and pick this up.
Generally, the Sidekick, with the optionality, the way it's built in, it will do a decent job of recommending the quarterbacks who still have some backdoor stack options available. So, you know, Rodgers is a good example where you can get a Corley, a Conklin. So, and, you know, if you have a week 17, like if you have a week 17 bring back, that quarterback is available. You know, you have 0 teammates, but someone on the other side of that game, and he has players behind him. Okay, like this could be fun. I mean, the premium example of this is Jordan Love. You know, if you have Justin Jefferson or Jordan Addison, and you need a quarterback, and Jordan Love is there, and you know you're in position to grab like a Romeo Dobbs, a Dontavian Wicks, if you know ball. You know, you can grab Luke Musgrave, you can grab Marshawn Lloyd. There's a bunch of Packers that you can tack on, and the Sidekick has some of that built in with the optionality stuff that we talked about earlier. Let's see. Any other questions here? Does it work with the sprint, the marathon? That's one of the things on the roadmap to have it work with those format. It's not designed for those. It's designed for the Best Ball Mania style tournament where you have week 14 advance, single week 15, single week 16, and kind of 100+ final in week 17, I would say. There was a question here, Shady. I know you're kind of you're gonna have to jump off soon, but
this is a good one to close on.
Yeah, this is a good question for you to close with.
So there's a really complicated answer to this, but mostly the answer is no. They're listed in a pretty good order. We don't play out every game tree, evaluate everything, and then come back to give you this perfect thing in all possible futures. What we do try to do is using all the research we've done on what actually makes things being good, positive EV, make sure those are the things at the top with all the things we've been talking about. But then we also express some uncertainty in the value of the players and the ways that they're tiered and how they interact with each other, so that you're not always getting the same recommendations. You're actually getting them sort of in a ratio that makes sense for building out a portfolio of the good picks.
Yes, we're actually, like, if you just gave the best EV all the time and it's 0.00001 better than, you know, the next highest EV player, you're not taking the right ratio of the two, right? So that's kind of what we're trying to do. We're trying to then say, okay, what is the right ratio of those two given this kind of level of distance? And the level of distance changes, and so that's kind of the problem that you need to do.
Any last thoughts, Sax, before I leave the two of you? It's way past my bedtime. If those of you know me, well, no, it's been fun. I look forward to answering more questions as we keep going through this journey. But otherwise, I'll drop.
No, appreciate you jumping on.
Thanks.
We'll see you later.
All
Good night, JD.
Thanks for the chat. Good night.
We got another question here. Will Sidekick work with drafts? That would be a different mode that we would have to add. If I were gonna think about this one, I think that stuff like the Eliminator and the Sprint and the Marathon, I think those are going to be around a lot longer than Superflex will. So I think we kind of want to prioritize those. Maybe way down the road we would get Superflex, but I would say, just wanting to be truthful with you, I think that one's going to be later on the roadmap if I had to estimate.
Yeah, for sure. I did want to. We got a question, and I think we should probably just review some of the pricing stuff and the way we currently have this set up. So currently, if you guys are interested in testing this out, head over to legendaryupside.com, sign up for a monthly subscription, a yearly subscription. The monthly is $10. The stress test is 5 days. Probably just want to sign up for the monthly. Go ahead and sign up for that for $10. You can try it out. And, the installation process takes seconds. You can jump in drafts. Underdog is continuing to roll out tournaments. They're continuing to give us plenty of stuff to fire at. So that's beautiful. And you can test this out, see what it does, see if you like it, give it a whirl. If you want to sign up for the Sidekick, which comes with a pretty sweet Discord badge, and take advantage of the $150 off flash sale that we have going, then you want to click the link down below in the description and use promo code LEGUP. Use promo code LEGUP at checkout. You get $150 off. Now, if you're an existing Legendary Upside subscriber, we're going to give you back the remaining credit on your Leg Up subscription as a refund. So you won't see that when you sign up. So you'll see that as, $350 or $349 because it's $499, $150 off, $349. I'm going to go in the back end and I'm going to cancel your Leg Up sub. If you haven't already, I will give you credit to the day that you signed up. So it doesn't matter if you cancel it or not. I will do that for you. And then I will refund the remaining credit on your Legendary Upside subscription. So I wanted this to be a little cleaner than this in terms of how this works. But unfortunately, the way the billing cycle stuff all worked out, this is the way that is the cleanest for making sure that we're kind of doing the $150 off a $499 item to get you to $349. And then whatever you have left on the Leg Up sub, you get back because the Sidekick tier covers all Leg Up content. Do you want to jump in a draft?
Yeah, sure. Let's rip one here. It'd be fun to close it out with a draft.
Yeah. All right. So let's see. We got the Chihuahua closed. I feel somewhat.
Oh,
we're partly responsible for that.
We're all trying to find the guy who did this. Lion has a question. Any reason why you chose Firefox? So Chrome is pretty strict with any extension that Chrome deems gambling related, and so they are not as friendly to those extensions. It can be a little bit more challenging to get those out there, but we knew that Firefox would be a nice, easy, clean experience for everyone. So that's why Firefox. Maybe Chrome in the future. That's not officially on the roadmap right now, but it may be something where if that's easy enough for us to get going, we could potentially offer multiple browsers in the future. But for right now, it's going to be Firefox. And honestly, it's so convenient and easy to use on Firefox. Once you try it, I don't think you won't really miss. If you're used to a different browser, I promise it'll feel fine.
Yeah, I use Firefox. I've had it open for weeks, and I use these two tabs. Sidekick, so that the drafts get pulled in. You want this open. One of the most common troubleshooting items is, why aren't my drafts working? And it's because this isn't open. But as Zach pointed out earlier, if this is closed and you hit this icon here, it opens it up. So you don't need to type anything in. You just need to go to Underdog. The overlay pops up. When you're on the main page, it'll minimize automatically, but it'll still take you to this page if you need to go there. If you're on the active, then it'll be right there for you. It'll open up for you. Where did my BBM go? It's not. No.
If you control F BBM or Best Ball Mania, you'll find it.
There we go. All right. So the Sidekick currently doesn't have any rankings in because the draft hasn't started yet, but that'll change once we get going here. Let's see. So CLN asks a question about it not working. The answer to anything troubleshooting related is hop in the Discord and head to the Legendary Upside Discord and then the Sidekick support channel. So that is legendaryupside.com/sidekick. We'll have the support channel there for you, the correct support channel. So jump in there. We've got Sack helping out when he's not streaming with me, but we also have some of the devs helping out as well with answering questions, getting people set up. So if there's any issues that you're having with it, please hop in the Discord and we should be able to get it sorted out pretty quickly.
Couple quick questions here. We've got Sidekick only for Underdog. Right now it's only for Underdog, but high on our priority list on the roadmap is getting the Sidekick for DraftKings. Pat mentioned earlier we'd love to have it for you by August, but we want to make sure that it's working perfectly on DraftKings as well. So we're going to be hard at work on that. Lots of cool stuff that we want to add here.
Yeah, and so a couple little features here. If you put players in the queue, you click here, they go in the queue. Click here again, they come out of the queue. And yeah, that can be quite handy, especially if you're multi-tabling. But it's just kind of been the default way that I click players, especially because it works from the draft board. So if I want to put a player in the queue from the draft board, it takes me right back to it and puts the player right in the queue. So then you can see who's in your queue when you're on the draft board. So one of the things I like about it is it makes it easier to just sit on the draft board and watch the draft go. Because I actually I didn't use this screen as much as some others because I wanted to see what the available player list was. And, it's still helpful to come in and check the ADP list, maybe what the normal rankings say. You can still do that, but you're still able to think about what you might do at your next pick a little bit more easily with the Sidekick, continuing updating the dynamic rankings right here over on the side. This is where I tend to prefer to have it.
Jewish McCaffrey had a really good question, wondering how often is it designed to recommend Jalen Hurts at ADP when you have AJ Brown? Is Hurts always going to be the top player in the list at that spot unless there's a crazy faller? That's a really good question. The answer is no. He will not always be the top player in the list. He's going to be the top player in the list a pretty large percentage of the time, but we've got Shady's pretty cool diversification math in there. So there will be some AJ Brown teams that you don't want to have Jalen Hurts on. Simple as that. Now, you don't want to always pass on Jalen Hurts with AJ Brown. We also happen to think he's a pretty good pick at price, how we've got him ranked. So you'll get a lot of, if you got AJ Brown and Hurts is on the board, you'll get a lot of him, but there will be times when you pass on him. I had one of those literally just the other day. I was like, God, that feels weird. But I know, I haven't passed on him yet that I remember. And so it's good to mix it in every once in a while. And I think I did it because I got a decent faller too.
Do you remember who it was?
It wasn't like a crazy fall. It might have been Laporta, or maybe it was Zay Flowers. It was one of those.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, that's a good reason, I think, to pass on Hurts if you're getting Flowers in the fourth. He's such a feature of the third right now.
Yeah, it wasn't so huge where I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this guy's here. But it was good enough, and I'm assuming that Hurts just got assigned slightly lower value there in that draft with the diversification stuff. So anyway, it's cool. And yeah, I've talked about this on the stream that we did earlier today that we posted on the YouTube channel. But I want to keep talking about it because I'm pretty intimately acquainted with how the Sidekick works, and it's still hard for me to trust it on the frequency of stuff when I'm like, but I like this. I want to do this. And I promise, like, try taking the stuff that you don't like as much and then just give it like 10 drafts, man. Give it 10 drafts to see. And then 10 drafts in, you'll be like, oh yeah, it went like 80-20 on that tie that I thought was about 80-20. But I would have never gotten to 80-20. I would have been 100-0 in the direction of what I liked. But it's just hard to click the 20 in the 80-20.
It's hard to click the 20, yeah.
And it's hard to know that you're in the instance of the 20. You're in the part of the sample that's making up the 20 when you're doing it. You're like, oh, this feels bad. Well, if I do this too much, I'm going to be breaking ties too much. It's like, I promise. We worked real hard on it. Like it's gonna do it at right about the frequency that we think is good. And you're allowed to disagree with it, but I would say, especially when you're just first giving it a go, just kind of trust it and see how you like it. And then you can make some adjustments. If you're like, all right, I listened to you, Sack, I let it do its thing, then I don't like it. I want to do more of my own thing. You can. We built it to let you do that.
Yep. So here it's got Devonta Smith's the highest by ADP. Sam Laporta is the highest partly because I have Amon-Ra, partly because he's a solid pick here in the third. I am going to go Devonta. I don't trust this room. Look at this room. Like I'm one of 4 teams that's going like true, or 5 teams maybe that's going true 0 running back. I'm not. I'm nervous about what receiver is going to look like here. So that's a spot where I'm going to IKB it.
And I will say this is one of the highest I've ever seen Laporta. So I don't want someone to think, oh man, it's always going to give me Laporta so early if I have Amon-Ra and Ayuk. It's like it's going to move him up, but this is pretty early for Laporta. So this was just one of the drafts that Pat got in where it would be diversifying in the direction of Laporta. Even if he didn't have Amon-Ra and Ayuk, this would be a draft where Laporta is probably inherently ranked a little bit higher, just due to diversification stuff.
I think that's right. But I just, and it's not really a diversification thing there. It's a structure thing. And I'm going to break ties to structure over diversification. So that's, I think, there was a question about like, what if people just auto draft with this? You certainly could just like put the top guy in the queue and let it time out, but that's not what it's for. It's supposed to be a dynamic rankings tool. And like, you could just auto draft off the rankings too. This would be better than that for sure, but that's not the point of it. The point is to help kind of like identify the best group of picks. And then you're kind of like, those are really good picks. Let me think about what I should do in this spot. And with the additional information, like what the other drafters are doing, what the room looks like, what the profiles that I'm putting together are. The fact that I have Rashee Rice, he's probably getting suspended. I've got 2 rookies, a veteran receiver, or breaking a tie to a receiver over a running back makes a lot of sense with this build. That type of stuff is invaluable. We're not trying to solve for that. We're trying actually to take some of like the more kind of basic stuff off your plate to an extent, so that it's just like quickly serving it up. Like here's kind of the top group of players that are probably most interesting to you. What would you like to do here within this group? Or sometimes, like we showed earlier, I'm not interested in that group. I'll scroll all the way down past that group and take someone that's maybe 6th or 7th on the list occasionally. Most of the time, though, I do find myself taking someone pretty high on the list.
A couple good questions, but I want you to get to make your pick here.
Well, here's to answer Jewish McCaffrey's question. I mean, Hurts is going to be at the top of this pretty regularly. And a reason, right, not to take Laporta keeps you flexible to I mean, obviously, I literally took Smith, so now I have the correlation. But the detours are usually not hard to find early on in these rooms. There was a question here twice from Dan. How soon will the Jaccard similarity tool be coming? How soon will the Jaccard similarity tool be coming?
Very soon, Dan. We're hard at work. I mean, so here's, I mean, Pat, can I give a little? So, I mean, I've got the code to do it. If listen, if you've subscribed to the Sidekick already and you were just champing at the bit to get your Jaccard similarity chart, I want to do right by the people. You email me your underdog CSV,
Wow.
and I will run it manually for you. The tool just needs to be set up to handle a bunch of people uploading CSVs and running. Like, I can't have it crashing if multiple people are uploading a CSV and running it at the same time. We got to get it ready for distributing to a lot of people. So that's really it works, but we want to make sure that it's going to work right when a lot of people are using it. So I don't want to, knock on wood. I think it'll be ready by tomorrow on the site. But in the meantime, if you're just dying to see it right now, go ahead and DM me your CSV. Oh my God, DM me your CSV from Underdog, and I'll run your Jaccard similarity, and you'll get your chart. So, but it is honestly, I understand why the people want it, because I run mine, darn near every day. So. It's super helpful. Like Pat and I, if you haven't read the full Sidekick intro post that Pat wrote, where he compares our Jaccard similarity charts, it honestly was super eye-opening for us to see them side by side and then talk about the differences and then be like, okay, so mine's doing this because I do this a lot. Oh, well, I'm doing this, and that's why mine looks like this. And I guess together, that's why they look like this compared to. It's cool, man. It's real cool. So I want other people to have them too, so we can talk about them, because I think it's one of the better tools for measuring a portfolio.
Yeah, I think it's really fun to get like a quick high level overview of what you're doing, and then you can go, With mine, I was like, I'm probably doing too much of the same structure and too much of the same combos, because even though I have a wide array of players, I'm not that diversified. And then that's an area to dig into when I'm like trying to figure out what my exposures look like, what my combos look like, what my structures look like. It's pointing me to a really good starting point of like, actually, you're probably fine with your players' exposure, but you're not that great with your structures and combos. I'm going to IKB it again. I'm going to take Kincaid. I like Kincaid a lot here. I know I could use a fourth receiver, but I tend to be a little bit more willing to take Kincaid without Allen when I have a guy like Hurts or Lamar, another elite, right? Because if Kincaid's having a really good finals, Allen's also probably doing well, and so I want to make sure I'm scoring a bunch of points at quarterback. But a Hurts to Devontae plus Kincaid, I mean, Kincaid can score a couple touchdowns, and you're feeling amazing, even if Josh Allen doesn't outscore Jalen Hurts, or it's very, very close. The people are loving that you're willing to do the Jaccard similarity for him.
I mean, listen, like there's a couple motivations for us doing all these tools and all this content for you guys. And number one is like, we want this for ourselves. Like a bunch of this was stuff I was doing for myself or Shady was doing for himself, but we knew we were going to be better together, with all of us together working towards a common goal. And so we wanted to have really cool shit. and we just have fun doing this, and it's fun to share stuff like that. And, of course, like we're selling it, you're paying us money for it, but like in the grand scheme of things, we probably should charge more. But Pat was pretty at it. Like when we told Pat, like, dude, you should charge more for this. Like, we have a pretty good way of quantifying the edge, and you're not charging what the edge is. And we should at least charge what the edge is. Otherwise, we're taking money out of the games that we can beat, and we should capture that money. I gotta say, like, working with Pat on this has made me realize that Pat like is just a genuinely caring human, and he's just trying to do right by the people that he's making content for. So it's just cool. We're
it's all cool. We're trying to beat the games here. We're gonna have fun. We're gonna beat these games. That's what we're doing. We're gonna have a hell of a summer. Legendary Upside is gonna have a hell of a summer. That's
it's just been fun. It's been really fun to work on all this stuff, and we're super excited to share it, man. So
yeah, it's exciting. It's very rewarding. Someone asked a question. I'm not sure where it went, but about how long this was in the works. It's been in the works a while. It feels very satisfying to get it out. I'm excited to have people have the opportunity now to test it out and see what we've been working on. But really, I mean, this started with the playoff best ball tool, which was kind of like Zach's brainchild. This was the man who taught us all how to play playoff best ball, and then we coded his brain into a tool. And we all banked playoff best ball.
Except for me.
That's how that went. Well, you're a man of the people, as we know from your Jaccard similarity charts that everyone's going to be getting manually.
I'm running the first batch of them right now. So
I heard you typing. We've been working on this. I mean, it's like, okay, what if we did this for Best Ball Mania? Obviously, you do it for the playoffs. You're like, could we do this for Best Ball Mania? Well, the first thing is you can't put in your picks manually. It's one with the playoff best ball tool. If you didn't use it, you put in your picks manually. It didn't know what the room was. It kind of had like a bar that slid up and was like, we assume these players are gone, but if they're not, you need to slide it back to see them. And so, it wasn't going to work for an 18 round draft with, where you're drafting 200 players or whatever. Like, it just wasn't going to do it. But we put a lot of time into figuring out a path that we could stand behind. So yeah, we honestly, we would have loved to get this out a little sooner, but we just there was a lot to do, and it does feel good to get this out. I'm excited for you guys to try.
Yeah, we wanted to do it the right way. We didn't want to give you guys something that wasn't ready, and I'm glad that it's finally here. I've been real excited to be able to share it, just because it's been a bunch of fun working on it, and I think you guys are going to like it just as much as we've enjoyed getting to play with it. So excited to just see you guys share all the teams and everything that you draft with it, share what you learn about it. You guys might teach us some stuff about it. Getting more people to have their hands on this will be really fun.
I'm gonna go Watson here. I feel like receiver is getting super dried up, and I'm gonna go an extreme zero running back, and we're gonna see how it handles that. So it's not super extreme, but 5 wide receivers, 1 quarterback, 1 tight end through 7 rounds, and we're gonna see what the Sidekick thinks about that and what the recommendations start to look like. So we're pushing the structure a little bit. As you saw, it was totally down to take David Montgomery there, correlated with Amon-Ra, with Brandon Ayuk. Maybe that was a better pick, but I wanted to take Christian Watson, make sure I got a 5th wide receiver before there was kind of a big tier break. Jameson Williams goes, so now, I mean, it's a while. Cortland Sutton, Curtis Samuel, Tyler Lockett, and before them, just a bunch of running backs. So we're going to see how it handles this extreme zero running back build. Thank you. It was telling me to take Watson.
That's how I feel every time Jerry Jeudy's sitting at the top and someone else takes him. Like, whew, almost had to diversify into some Jerry Jeudy there.
Any consideration to allowing users to upload their own rankings? That's one of the highest priority items. For people who are joining, it's that customizable, uploadable rankings, and DraftKings functionality. Those are the 2 things. We're kind of back working on getting this to do more stuff and do stuff in an even more fun way. Those are the top 2 priorities. Yeah, Dan asks how many times you think you've not taken Jerry Jeudy when it's suggested Jerry Jeudy.
Let's see. I've done a little over 700 drafts. So probably a little over 700. No, I don't know, probably like over 100 times. But
Wow.
I have greater than 0 Jerry Judy, which is different than different than it would have been if I wasn't using the Sidekick. So there are times where I will sprinkle them in, but Jerry Judy to me is like a break glass in case of emergency. Like this team's going to be really bad unless I get really lucky at a wide receiver outcome that I think is really improbable. And so I'm like, you know what I think is really improbable? Jerry Judy being any kind of good at the game of football. And so I'll take him there.
Oh man.
I can't wait to be buried by Jerry Judy this season.
You're really opening yourself up.
Oh, dude, I'm
like Amari Cooper holding out. Like you could get buried.
I'm gonna get dunked on so hard. It's gonna be really fun.
Yeah. So we got a comment here. The last turn, it had me do something I wouldn't normally do, and I also probably would never draft this team because of the Week 12 buys. Wait, this okay. You're in the draft, so let's look at your team. All right, so he's got Harrison, London, Kelsey, Higgins, Cook, Godwin, Moss, Burrow. Thoughts on that? Is that how many Week 12 buys does he have?
I mean, he's got the Bengals and the London Week 12, but yeah, it's not.
Well, you did do yeah. So that is a good point with the bye week overlap. We put this in here. A lot of the stuff that's in here is showing you like what the Sidekick's doing, and it's kind of like, hey, you probably wondering why you're not seeing any quarterbacks. Well, they're all docked. The bye week overlap for running back and wide receiver isn't like adjusting the running backs and wide receivers. It's informational only, and so that is something to keep an eye on. We put that in case you have a lot of one bye week at that position. You'll need to IKB it a little bit if you feel like you've got too many bye weeks, but that's why the tag is there to help you do that. All right, so I thought that I was going to get locked out at receiver, and I'm really not. I could take Lockett here. That's what it prefers. And it also likes Shaheed. So we'll see what Matt does. So he went Lockett. So I could go Shaheed, Javonte, Benson. Yeah. So it feels to me like this tier of running backs is kind of drying up. And I only have one. So I am going to take Javonte. Shaheed, I mean, you're getting a little bit of a bonus for the week 17. But it's with Zamir White. Yeah, I'm going to take that's like a small kind of tiebreakery thing, but here I think I'm going to go to my feeling like this tier is about to dry up, and I feel fine at receiver. I mean, I don't have any rookies. This is a really strong wide receiver room, I think. So running back felt like the better pick to me. Yeah, we got it. There's some things that we are going to try to really get the education out on what this does, what's baked into it, what's not baked into it, and that's one of them. That the bye week overlap is baked in at quarterback in a pretty big way. At running back, wide receiver, no, it's not doing anything, but it still can be helpful. And that's why it's out there.
Yeah. Running back and wide receiver, you're kind of we're just trusting you to monitor that and determine if you want to take that many buys at that position group. At quarterback, we're docking. If you've got a quarterback with the same buy, we're making sure that that's not showing up. Early in your rankings. Sometimes you'll still get the option to take two quarterbacks with the same buy, but it's very likely going to be either well past ADP or you've got it so stacked up that it's a pretty good value. But we'll still have it marked for you either way, so you can decide if that's something that you want to do.
Yeah, so here's interesting because it was into this tier of running backs. Like if Robinson, Spears, Benson had made it back, it was into those guys. And then Goddard was next after them. And that's where I would kind of note that what are we doing? We're adjusting the rankings. We like these running backs. Goddard is moving up the rankings because he's correlated with Jalen Hurts. But it is important to kind of use your brain in these spots. I KB'd it by one pick, but I still didn't take the guy at the very top because I'm like, I think this group of running backs is going to go off the board before my next pick, which it did. I mean, I guess you could say Chase Brown is in it, but I mean, some of these, like Robinson, I think is just the starter probably. Singletary very clearly is the starter. Spears, I think, is like a little bit more of a safe version of the Brown bet. So, you know, I'm glad I took the running back. But had one of these running back fallers come to me, I actually think I IKB it again and take Goddard. Get that correlated tight end 2 with Jalen Hurts. That feels really, really nice to me. And I'm okay now with Zamir White and Javonte Williams pushing RB3 at least another round. I don't want to push it too far, but getting a really strong addition to this team in Goddard would be worth doing that to me.
Yeah, so I've just fired out the first few Jaccard charts to people who have sent me their CSV files. And it's making me realize that I need to review some of these on stream with people and talk about how to get the most out of this tool. Because if you haven't had, experience kind of reading it and then digesting what it's telling you about your portfolio, it's a very information dense graphic. It's communicating quite a bit of information to you in just one visualization. So being able to read it definitely takes a little practice and get the most out of it. You can glance at it pretty quickly and just be like, cool, I'm pretty diversified, or ooh, I need to work on some stuff.
Right.
But
it gives you that high level, like, what do I need to do? I want to start if I'm going to try to dial in my exposures a little more.
Yeah, you get the immediate high level stuff pretty easily, but you can glean a lot more from it. So I think sometime this week we'll do a review on a stream where I'll let some people, I'll pull up Jaccard charts and review them for folks, and we can talk about what I'm seeing in your portfolio and compare it to mine or Cup and Pat's and discuss the differences in the styles and what that means. It doesn't. I've had multiple people be like, is this really bad or really good? And a lot of the times, unless you're truly an outlier and under diversified, like if you're in the low double digits or into single digits, that's when I might start worrying that, okay, there's something that I'm doing here that's making me a pretty significant outlier. And you just want to be really cognizant of what that is and make sure that you feel pretty strongly about going in that direction. But for the most part, like, I'm getting people that have totally fine looking charts and they're like, oh God, how bad is this? And it's like, it's not good, or you're not even in a spot where it's good or bad. It just depends on what you're going for. Like, do you like having a lot of player stands? And like, yeah, you look fine. Like, are you really not a player stand kind of guy? Or you just want to scoop a bunch of values? Then you're probably a little under diversified with what you're going. So we'll do a stream where we go over all that stuff so I can get people more acquainted with it.
Yep. And someone asked if you're doing this for everyone. You're doing this for people who've signed up for the Sidekick tier, which you can do in the link below. If you're a Leg Up subscriber, you'll get credit for any remaining value on your Leg Up sub as a refund. That'll take like 5 to 10 days to hit. It won't show up when you sign up. I'm going to go back and do that on the back end afterwards. It's not the cleanest way to do it from, a starting point of we can do anything, but given the starting point of the various billing cycle stuff with Stripe, it's the best way that we have to do it right now. So if you go ahead and sign up, which you can do with $150 off with promo code LEGUP, don't forget to use promo code LEGUP at checkout for $150 off. Then at that point, DM Sack and he will give you your Jaccard similarity tool. And at that point, Sack will be DMing our devs to say, please get the Jaccard similarity tool on the site so I don't have to do this anymore. I also want to note that we're running a stress test. We actually need your help. We need your help to make sure that we have enough kind of back end stuff set up to support this going forward. So if you're a Legendary Upside subscriber, click on that installation guide in the description and go test this out. Because as a Legendary Upside subscriber through Friday, you have access to it. You don't need to sign up today if you don't want to. Now, if you want to take advantage of the flash sale, you want to get the badge in the Discord, you want to get the Jaccard similarity directly from SAC. I mean, it's a bespoke chart from SAC. You know, you're not getting it from the tool. You're getting it from the man himself. If you want to go ahead and do that, go ahead and do that. But you don't have to right now. You can go ahead and test it out first. See if you like it. See if you actually want to use this thing, and get a feel for it. And you can just do that as a Legendary Upside subscriber. Link to sign up for Legendary Upside also in the description below.
Chipsy says, is having Brooks on 1/3 of my teams good because it feels good? I had a ton of Brooks. I've diversified to a little bit less of him lately, just because I'm getting Kendre Miller, not in a bad way, but in a way that the market reacts. Remember last year when we all knew Kendre Miller was going on the pup, and how could you not know that he was going on the pup? And then the market dropped him like 4 rounds anyway when he went on the pup, exactly as we expected. I kind of think we're going to see that with Brooks, and I'm going to have so much fucking Brooks. but I'm holding strong because I know I'm about to go absolutely buck wild bananas when Jonathan Brooks ADP goes down a little bit. So
yeah, that's
just
what
making
I'm
room.
thinking too.
Yeah.
How does this tool know your exposures? It doesn't. And there are other tools that do that, like the Spike Week tools. You can get 40% off Spike Week with promo code LEGUP if you want to be diving in, reviewing your exposures, your player combos, all that stuff. That's not what this is. What this is a tool that dynamically adjusts rankings throughout the draft, and it does it with some diversification, math that Shady has explained earlier in the stream. If you want to, he explained it a few different ways and a few different times. If you want to go back and check some of that out, but the idea is we don't know what you're doing in drafts, but we know what our rankings are generally saying about these players, and they're not saying break this tie the same way every single time. They're saying break this tie 60-40, break this other tie 70-30. This, this tier of players is fairly flat. This tier of players is not flat, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we've been working. That's one of the big things that we were working on this whole time to make sure this idea could actually be done, is how do you build the rankings in such a way that actually powers a tool like this with diversification principles kind of built into it. But it's not about your specific portfolio. It's not saying you're taking too much of this guy, stop taking too much of this guy. It's saying based on our rankings, we're kind of recommending this guy at this frequency. And so as you're using this tool, the hope is you're building out a portfolio that when you go back and then review your exposures, you're going to feel like, yeah, this is a portfolio that I can kind of massage into. Maybe you're tweaking it here and there in certain spots, but you're not opening up your exposures and going, oh my God, I've got some real work to do here. And now I've got to take big swings the other way. And then what has that created? That's actually created me not drafting enough of the guys I like late in the summer and all of that type of stuff. So just kind of helping you stay on track while you're using it is kind of what we designed it to do. Could the Sidekick recommend a hyperfragile build? Or does that not really work, since it would be diversifying structure rather than diversifying your player exposures? So it's not like allergic to running back starts, but even Mike Leone's latest article, he was saying when he was saying hyperfragile was a pretty interesting strategy a few years ago. He's like, in this environment, it's really, really difficult to say, I'm going to beat you with quantity, not quality at the wide receiver position, because the quantity is now getting snapped up. It's not just the quality. The quantity is actually getting snapped up in the first like 7 or 8 rounds. So in a sense, I almost feel like running back kind of is hyper fragile now. Like running back. Zamir White, Brian Robinson is like a pretty strong running back room, like really strong. So you can build hyper fragile, but not in the way we used to. Is kind of my thinking on that. It's not really going to push you to running back starts. It's just not, because that's a lot of running back capital to spend in an environment where wide receivers are flying off the board.
Yeah, you technically could see a running back start if you got a pretty good value on your second. If you get Achane deep in the third and you got Gibbs deep in the second, and so you went something like Brees, Gibbs, Achane, you technically might be able to see a running back. But yeah, I have lots of hyper fragile teams that are 4 running backs, but it's usually like 2 in the first 3 rounds, and then my last 2 before round 8 or round 9. And I'm like, I'm good. Like, that's plenty of running back. So yeah, you can build hyper fragile. It's just the hyper fragile looks different now.
It looks a little different. So if after this last pick, you may have noticed it started to get a little bit nervous about receiver. It's now round, it's going to be round 14, and I'll have 5 wide receivers. So it was kind of like, yeah, you got a strong receiver room. You're going away from it. That's fine. No need to worry. You took care of quarterback. You took care of tight end. You're getting some running back depth. But now it really would like me to return to wide receiver in a way that feels good to me. Like, this is where I think we took care of running back in a true zero running back room. We're now in a decent spot, basically bought ourselves flexibility at the running back position. We can return to the wide receiver position, I think. And, it's not freaking out. Ray Davis is second on the list, but it definitely views it as a priority here. Yeah, so Artillery Frost says, the problem to me is everything is talked about from the perspective of everything but wide receiver, when really the only thing that matters is wide receiver firepower. Like, teams should not be referred to as zero running back. They should be referred to as hero running back, elite tight end, and elite quarterback, and just assume you spent up at wide receiver. I think you're kind of right. Yeah. But it's sort of like hard. I think we're kind of like moving past like the simple structures too. It's sort of like, did you spend enough at receiver? And then what did you buy with like your extra like, like you have a little extra budget that you get. Like when you spent, you got your core stuff. You gotta make sure you have enough wide receivers, but then you have this little extra money that you get to go around and spend. And like, what did you spend it on is really interesting. I think what people are spending their flex budget on is really interesting. I like to spend mine on tight ends. If you're spending yours on Pacheco, like, I think that's cool. Like the 4-5 turn, that's probably a pretty good pick. But like, if really what we're talking about now, it's like, what did you spend your flex spending on? If you're not spending enough at receiver in the early rounds, it just feels, I mean, how are you making up for it? To me, like, it's just really tough. So Ray Davis is at the top of the queue here, which I feel like is fine. I probably do take him if he makes it here. Although God mercy in the stream. So, and then Malachi Corley's next. I'm gonna go ahead and put both those guys in the queue.
Yeah, going back to what you're talking about of like having your budget for detours, I think that's probably like the most helpful way to frame navigating the draft room and making sure that you get enough wide receiver firepower. It's that, every draft you enter, you've got your little allowance. You've got your allowance of what you're allowed to spend on non-essentials. The wide receivers are the essentials. And so you just, hey, got to be prudent, got to follow that budget. because if you get out over your skis, you run up that credit card bill, and it's round 11, and the wide receiver tab comes due, and you can't pay it. It's going to be rough.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's really easy to get tempted by kind of the non-essential spending in the early rounds right now, right? And I think we're all feeling that. And like Pete, I did a draft with him this morning on Best Ball Breakfast, and it's like we took Trey McBride in the 4th, and he's like, I still feel like I'm on track at wide receiver when I take Trey McBride because he's like a pass catcher, you can stack him, but you're not, you're still not. And that team turned out really well, but you are like Jalen Hurts is a detour and Dalton Kincaid is a detour. Now, I think personally, like I love that I took those guys here. I think their detours well worth making, and felt really good about wide receiver through 7 rounds. Went away from it. We'll get back to it here soon, but it's not about like, oh, you just got to take wide receiver every round. But I think just being really, really thoughtful about how you're spending that extra flexibility.
Jewish McCaffrey had a good question. He said, this year I've generally been pushing QB2 as late as possible when I went elite QB. Seems like this is also how the Sidekick will operate unless there's a very significant secondary stack. So it depends. And, I've like, for example, I'll have some teams where I've got like a Josh Allen stack that I started with. And then I might have like, I ended up with, a George Kittle and, maybe I got Ayuk in the 2nd round or something, and I get George Kittle, and then I get Josh Allen and build out a stack there. Well, I've got a pretty good Niners stack, and so it'll show me Purdy, not really, not too early because I already got Josh Allen, so it'll account for that. I'll let you make your pick here before I.
No, yeah, Corley, I thought about the last round, so
yeah. But yeah, that's I think ultimately Jewish McCaffrey, what I'm trying to get at is the back to front addition that we've got on the roadmap will be really helpful with that. Where then you kind of know how many outs you've got at quarterback and how comfortable you can be really pushing it. That's the way that I really try to play quarterback is how many good outs do I have of good stacking options or back stacking options. And then if it starts to get scarce, I just pull the trigger. I never want to get myself into a position where I'm like, oh, please don't snipe me on the last quarterback that makes sense for me, because that feels pretty bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you want to always, it's just drafting skill. You want to be aware of tiers, aware of, if you don't take this guy and he goes, is this team going to be in a world of hurt? And if it is, I usually take the guy. Thoughts on how you close this one out, Zach?
Let's see the team again because I've been making Jaccard charts. Let's see. So we're Amon-Ra, Ayuk, Devonta Smith, Jalen Hurts. Okay, so we started really strong. Got the elite tight end Dalton Kincaid, Jordan Addison, Christian Watson. So hammered wide receiver early, even with a couple detours. Spent our budget really prudently. Get into some good running backs in the good zone here. Get our Dallas Goedert stack. Brock Purdy. Okay, keep scrolling for me. And then Ty Chandler, Jalen Wright, Ray Davis, Malachi Corley. So I'm pretty partial to getting my last running back here. I think right now, especially, you and I have been talking about this. Let's just try and avoid these. There's some running backs that are starting to get tempting in the last round or two, but it's like they might be fool's gold. We don't have a ton of confidence in them yet. We're just starting to see the spark or the glint on these guys. Like, ooh, maybe this is something. But we don't have a ton of information yet. So I want to try and be done earlier at running back where we get guys with a higher degree of confidence. And then later in the summer, some of these guys that are just starting to sparkle are really going to shine and we can hammer them really hard. But I would prioritize getting like Eli Mitchell seems like a smash to me here. I think we feel pretty good about his chances of being the running back 2 in San Francisco. And it's a correlated team bet. I really want to do that. And and this is the thing, like now the Sidekick is like, yep, and close it out with wide receiver, baby, which I do just really like that. When I know that I probably just needed one more running back, and I know that there's lots of wide receivers I like late, it is fun to just kind of close it out there, and then it's easy.
Yeah. No, I think Mitchell. I mean, Mitchell fell in our lap there. He was a really easy pick. That's not one. You're probably if you're drafting, and you're just on your phone and you're praying Mitchell falls to you. So
Yeah.
nothing too special there. But it is nice that now, okay, what am I going to do now? I got the guy. What do I do? And the sidekick's immediately thinking ahead, and it's saying, you got 6 receivers. You didn't take a receiver from Christian Watson all the way to Malachi Corley. Receiver's probably the more position of need, even though it was a 0 running back build. Your running back room's looking pretty good now. So maybe we think about receiver here. Although if Tyrone Tracy came back, to you, you could consider him if the receivers are gone. But probably we're going receiver in the next round is kind of where its head's at. And I agree. I think we probably want receiver with this next pick.
Yeah, I definitely would be taking a receiver here. I won't jinx you and start saying guys. I mean, now here's the interesting sidekick streaming meta, because when you do streams with Pete, you guys try to avoid putting someone in the queue to not get sniped, but the sidekick's showing everyone what you want. So how does that impact the
here's what you
streaming
do.
meta?
So you minimize it.
Oh,
You minimize it. Yeah, there you go.
That's
maximize, minimize. There you go.
I love it. Yeah, that's pretty.
Khalif Raymond actually does seem like a good pick. Didn't need to be looking at him the whole time. I agree. Bring back on Purdy. Team stack with Amon-Ra. Pretty good pick. Pretty good pick. Let's go ahead and do it. And you know what? I'm sick of you guys sniping me. I'm gonna
keep them in the dark. Yeah, don't let them know your next move.
That's for the streamers. We had to have a feature for the streamers.
Oh, that's too good. Yeah, I like how this one came out, and yeah, it steered you in a way where it helps you with that early allowance that you had. You took a couple detours, but you still managed to be really strong at wide receiver.
Yeah, and I have some stuff I didn't end up using in terms of correlation, which is one of the things the sidekick. I wrote about this last year. I think it's really, really, really helpful. People talk about correlation like it's this thing that like you're gonna like only correlate and then forget about everything else you're doing, but it's kind of the opposite. Is that you're actually like you're correlating, you're breaking small ties towards correlation the whole time, and then it gives you flexibility, right? Like Purdy fell in my lap, and I happened to get handed an Amon-Ra Ayuk start. So that fell in my lap. That was easy. But, I've got Ty Chandler, I've got Jordan Addison, and I've got Christian Watson. I didn't use that, but J.J. McCarthy on a Jalen Hurts team, that works pretty well, So it's just sort of like it sets you up to do things that maybe you don't even need to end up doing, but you certainly like to have those outs if you end up needing them. I don't know if you heard, but it is Short King Summer.
I've been doing a lot of Greg Dortch lately as well. I'll let it when the sidekick tells me it's a Zay Jones time. I'll do that because I have a lot more Dortch than Jones, and that's what I want too. I want more Greg Dortch than Zay Jones. I feel more confident in that as a bet. But I want to have some Zay Jones. I don't think he's totally worthless. So there was a good question. Oh, Hoosier Devo asked, do we need to have the rankings uploaded to Underdog? You do not. Do you want to know one of the cool perks of being a Sidekick tier subscriber? Pat and myself and the rankings crew will go into the rankings during the day as we get new news, or we'll be discussing a situation and we might want to make an adjustment, and we'll make adjustments throughout the day. It's not you know, the rankings are not just, all right, everybody, every morning we get together for 10 minutes, discuss how things are going, and that's all the changes we do. We never
The
think
NFL's a
about
little
it
more
again.
chaotic than that. Yeah.
Yeah, we adjust constantly. And so the Sidekick is synced directly with our rankings. If we make a change in the ranks and you have a Sidekick, you're going to get the change right away.
Yeah,
Now
which
we,
allows you, if you want, to just sort by ADP. The
yep,
one here, which I actually like doing. Now, it's helpful when you're streaming to sometimes show the rankings to see the difference, and people can see that. But if you're just drafting personally, you have the rankings. The rankings are here in the Sidekick, right? So I like to have the ADP sorted. If you want to load in the rankings, you can definitely do that, but you don't have to. What you do need is this page running, and this is the dashboard, which you can get to by clicking this icon. So this powers the overlay, so you need to have both running, and you need to be signed into legendaryupside.com to have access to this. So
and you need to do that through your Firefox browser.
through your Firefox browser. Yeah.
So, because, you know, for example, I use Chrome for a lot of stuff, and so I'm signed into Leg Up on Chrome, but I also make sure that I'm signed in on my Firefox browser, and then it works smooth. And once, honestly, this is just like the initial learning curve stuff. If you had any trouble setting it up or anything like that, we tried to make it really easy for you. But we're also there in the Discord to help out with any kind of troubleshooting stuff like that. I think pretty much everyone who had any issue getting it set up today got that resolved really quickly in the Discord. You guys were great about it. You were really helpful in describing any kind of issue you were having. So you made our jobs easy. We were able to get you guys a Sidekick quickly, and not too hard to get set up.
No, it's really not. And yeah, there's some kind of issues that you might run into. Sin 2013 notices or lets us know that he was not signed in on Firefox. That kind of stuff might pop up, but we haven't had too many issues that require like in-depth attention. But if it does, we'll give you that attention. Jump on the phone with you if needed in Discord. Jump on a call with you in Discord.
Or on the phone.
Yeah, sure. Probably through Discord, but
yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. There was the separate rankings. I mean, we talked about we would like soon to have the ability for other rankings to work with it, but in the meantime, you could always upload other rankings to Underdog and then have the Sidekick going. So you got the leg up rankings on the Sidekick, and then you have another set of rankings on Underdog, and then you also have ADP. So you're like really set up there. If you wanna kind of get some other information beyond the Sidekick, you do have that lever. There's no need to have the leg up rankings in here. You're kind of just doing the leg up rankings twice that way. So yeah, I think that covers it. Zach, anything else you want to say before we get out of here?
I'm just excited that we finally get to share this stuff with you guys. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, everyone, and let us know. Share some teams you drafted with the Sidekick with us in the Discord. We'll be in there hanging out, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of content coming this week, talking about the Sidekick. Do a Jaccard chart review, some other fun stuff like that. And yeah, help us out with the stress test. We want to make sure we get our servers at maximum capacity. We want to make sure we can handle as much traffic as you guys can give us. So yeah, please take advantage of the stress test where any leg up subscriber can come and try out the Sidekick. You don't need to subscribe to the Sidekick tier to try it out. It's just the base leg up subscription will let you try it all the way through Friday. But then it goes behind the paywall. And so you'll need that Sidekick subscription. And
we got the flash sale running through Friday as well. So it would be a shame if it went behind the paywall and you did not use promo code leg up to get $150 off. Yeah, the link to do that down in the description below.
And don't forget your special Discord role, the Sidekick OG with the Sidekick badge in the Discord channel. In order to get that, you got to be subscribed by Thursday. That's for the OGs, the people that were riding with us from the very beginning. So Yeah, just I want to give the badges out. So go ahead and
You want to give the badges out and the Jackards out. So hit up Zach in the Discord.
yeah, keep me busy, folks.
All right, we'll see you guys soon. Thanks for watching. Have a great night. Yeah, we'll be streaming a bunch more, and we'll see you then.